everybody. Welcome, Toilets to Titles, Dash of DFS. We are at week 14. I am your host, Dirty Jobs. With me on my left, I got my man, Jeff. What's happening, Jeff? How are we doing this evening? Happy Saturday.
Hey, man. Happy Saturday, week 14. We're going to have the happiest week 14 since Bing Crosby tap danced with Danny effing K. So let's get it rolling.
For everybody else who doesn't know what the hell that means, I'll also look at my man Joe. Joe, what's happening? How you doing this evening?
Oh my God! Let's do this, baby. Hey, next, I'm going to start by kind of throwing a wrench in things. We got 3 games next Saturday, so
that's awesome. Yeah, we start Saturday football next week. The bye week's kind of starting to wrap up. We're getting hit really hard this week. With a bye week, man, there's a lot of people screaming the bye week blues, myself included. But yeah, that's cool. Saturday football, it's exciting.
I don't think people are used to bye weeks in week 14. I'll tell you what, for the leagues who didn't change their structure last year and they didn't add a week to their regular season and they stuck with 13. They're fucked because now you have bye weeks for playoffs. Which
it sucks. And then because you got guys like
Fields.
Yeah. Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers, Aaron Jones.
Yep.
Fields. I mean, you can't.
Got you there.
Even, in all honesty, it doesn't even matter if it's your playoff. If it's the last week of the regular season, you have games that are playoff games. Basically, they're going to be multiple games that are, in my biggest league. I win this week, I'm in. I lose, I'm out, and I have no Aaron Rodgers. That's something that, from a league perspective, I'm thinking about this now, and it's pissing me off that my league is like that. I didn't realize that bye weeks went to week 14 this year. I will have to tweak that from a league perspective. You can't have bye weeks impacting how your playoffs end up.
Not for nothing, Joe, but you might want to be without Aaron Rodgers regardless.
Well, that's true.
Although I digress.
3 straight weeks now, but
he's been pretty hot lately. It's been nice. I have him, and I've got Marcus Mariota as starters on a dynasty team I've got. And I'm just looking at it, and this is a deep dynasty bench and everything like that. So 0 available quarterbacks on the waiver wire.
So one more thing, Mike, one more stat, and I don't even remember the numbers, so I'm not even going to act like I'm not going to say numbers to it, but it's shocking. If you look at quarterbacks this year from a fantasy perspective, it's been a dreadful year for quarterbacks from a fantasy perspective, comparatively to previous years. Now, you have your Fields, and even Josh Allen is not having a Josh Allen type year. Mahomes is, but Fields and Hurts are. But if you look, it's crazy. It's like 60 to 70% difference. The amount of 20-point quarterback games in 2021 versus 2022 so far, it's way down, way down this year. Yeah. Which is funny because everybody talks about it still being a passing league, but the numbers are funny this year.
Yeah, and a lot of that too is a lot of the defenses I feel like have really stepped up their game. We've seen a lot of speed happening on a lot of defenses at the cornerback position and at the safety position, and you're really starting to see like a lot of these really big linebackers coming up from college. Like Patrick Queen matching up there with Roquan Smith, for instance. Man, that's a nasty 1-2 punch all of a sudden there. So you got these defenses that are giant. They're smashing people. It's really hard. It's getting really hard out there just to take a hit and not get hurt for the rest of the year, from some of these 375-pound tanks that are coming at you at 20 miles an hour. That's like getting hit by a bus, man. That's like the same kinetic energy as getting hit by a bus. I don't care how much pads you're wearing. You're probably going to be in trouble right there. So, it's a different game. And I think we're starting to see a lot of the side effects of that. Like a lot of defenders, even like 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago, like Goff or Stafford as a Detroit Lion, you were getting 300-yard games like nothing. Like we all, even in one of my leagues, we used to have a 5-point bonus for 300 yards. A couple of years ago, we moved it to 400 yards because guys were throwing for 300 yards like nothing. But now this year,
you're not seeing that yardage at all. I mean, it's not even close. If you look to 2 or 3 years ago, it's really crazy because the scoring is still up to an extent. Like there's not a lot of shutouts by any means, or 10-3 or 10-7 games or anything like that. But the passing yards are way down. The passing stats are way freaking down this year. It's really odd. And so are running backs too. Like there've been so many fewer 100-yard running back games this year than previous years too. It's a really odd year.
It really is. Yeah, it's been a different year of football, for sure. It hasn't seemed like there's been those huge fantasy games outside of like you usually have, maybe not such a consistent number one, like say in the receiver department. Look at what Justin Jefferson's doing again this year. He's just
and Devontae
Adams just carrying right along, doing what those guys do. Diggs, you've got your solid 1, 2, 3 punches there. But outside of those guys, you really haven't seen like too much high, steady production out of just basically anybody outside of your hit or miss guy that gets that 3 touchdown huge game, which is kind of a big deal about what we do here, right? We're going to try to get you those guys that get you those 3 touchdown games because that's what we do here at the Dash of DFS. So
real quick, that's a great point, Mike. And DFS has evolved so much because 5 years ago, if you had take your DFS lineup. If you had a bunch of guys that went for 70 yards and a touchdown, a defense that scored 10, a quarterback that put up 20, you would be in the money every single week in those tourneys. Now you're watching these games at 1, 2, 3, 4 o'clock. If you don't have one of those 3 touchdown guys, you have no chance. Like if Tyreek Hill, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, and let's say freaking
Jacobs
Jacobs go for 3 touchdowns apiece. If you have none of those guys in your lineup, you have a 0.0% chance of cashing. It's to your earlier point a minute ago. You not only are we looking for like those $3,500 guys who are going to get you 10 points, 15 points out of the blue for whatever reason, you have to hit the big guys right. And I don't even mean right like 15 to 20. If there's 3 touchdown guys, you got to have one of those guys in your lineup or you're done.
Absolutely. So with that, we'll go ahead and kick this off. Make sure you guys are following us at Apple, YouTube, Podbean, Twitch, Win a Family Breaks on the Facebook, Spotify, everywhere. Make sure you're liking, you're subscribing, you're hitting that, you're hitting the bell so you know that we're getting out there. We got all kinds of shows, guys. We got all kinds of stuff that you can find there at www.toiletsandtitles.com. And yes, I know I'm the only one that still says www. Videos, articles, and we got the best NFL content on there. I'm telling you guys what, we got the best writers in the industry. We've got every avenue covered. If you like IDP, we got you. If you like Dynasty, we got you. And not only do we got you, we got the best in the business covering it. Like Jared and Nino, those guys are crushing it. I don't know if anybody got to watch those Colorado interviews last night, but my God, man, those guys are just on fire right now.
They know their college ball.
Yeah, and I mean, better than anybody else. And, I've even been playing a little DFS on Saturdays just with some of the names that they're dropping, and it's been paying off. And that's really hard to do to get cash out on a college day, man, because you talk about your 3 touchdown games. There's guys out there that have 5 touchdown games sometimes that you got to compete with. It's crazy. Make sure you're getting on there at patreon.com/toilets and titles. Telling you there's all different kinds of tiers. My favorite tier on there is the $10 just because it gets you the free entry into the Frankenstein, which we have our playoff set, and I missed it by 1 damn position this year, which is probably for the best because basically all my good players got stolen. So we'll go ahead and get this kicked off. Jeff, who are you paying up for this week? Or actually, let's go ahead and start off with how we normally do. Who are you fading this week, Jeff?
Fading wise, and it's fairly ironic that the one guy that Joe brought up as far as a consistency standpoint at quarterback is the guy I'm fading this week. But I'm fading Patrick Mahomes, and I got a couple different ones. But Mahomes at Denver, 8,800 on FanDuel. Denver's offense is about as atrocious as we've seen. And on the flip side of that, their defense is about as good as we've seen this year. And they've stuck everybody. I mean, they're third against opposing quarterbacks. And so not that I think that Patrick Mahomes is going to go out there and lay an egg, but I think there are plenty of guys who you could pay for outside of 8,800 at quarterback on FanDuel that'll get you a little bit more production than what I think Patrick Mahomes is going to do in Denver. Another guy is, and I know this isn't necessarily paying up. It's Daniel Jones at home versus Philly. He's only 6,900 on FanDuel, but as Denver is third against opposing quarterbacks, Philly is first against opposing quarterbacks, and that doesn't spell good news for Daniel Jones, who has been off and on from a fantasy perspective this year. You've seen him have some decent games, and then you've seen him kind of just go off the rails a little bit. And the last guy I'll bring up is the reason I bring this up is because, and I'm not bringing up Deshaun Watson as a fade, even though I should, but because I brought him up last week and Joe should have listened to me. But because of that factor, I'm fading Nick Chubb at Cincinnati, 8,400. To me, it hurts Nick Chubb to have Deshaun Watson behind center more so than even if Jacoby Brissett was there. I think Deshaun Watson still has some rust to shake off. I don't think he's going to contribute much at all, and is going to focus a lot of people to stop Nick Chubb like we saw. And so for those reasons, Chubb is the one high-priced running back I'm staying away from.
I like that. That's actually a really good call right there. And speaking of, that is one of my fades this week is Deshaun Watson, just because, boy, he looked like poo last week, and I have a tough time thinking that he figured it all out in 7 days. Joe, who do you got as your fades this week?
Well, I gotta say, I think Jeff's right on with Mahomes, and he said it perfectly. Like, Mahomes isn't going to go for 10 fantasy points. He's probably still going to get you upwards to 20, but for his price at Denver, I don't see it being a 30 or 35 point day for him. That's a tough defense, and who knows what the weather will be at. It looks like the whole country's in for some weather tomorrow afternoon into Monday. So what the weather is going to be like out there too. So I agree on with Mahomes. When I look at running backs, I'll tell you the top, like on the DraftKings board for 1 p.m., the top two salaried are McCaffrey and Barkley. And I'll be honest, I don't love either of them. Would I play McCaffrey? I would, because of the volume with no Garoppolo. Now they have to rely on the running game, and they're going to have to rely on McCaffrey to win these games. And now they don't have Mitchell either. It's amazing what happens with the 49ers injury-wise, and yet they're still relevant and good. It's really a testament to the coaching in the front office there. But I don't love McCaffrey for 8,500 on DraftKings against Tampa, but I would still play him. Saquon Barkley, 8,000 on DraftKings. He's going to be my true fade of the week. He's a game time decision, and it's a true game time decision because he's banged up.
Right.
But even if he does play and get the carries, I don't think it's not a great matchup for him against Philly. I don't think the game script's going to be good for him. And to be completely honest, he's kind of he went for 19 last week, but his yard per carry the last few weeks has not been great ever since that kind of Detroit game where he did nothing. He hasn't overly bounced back from that. So I don't love Barkley at 8,000 either. When I look at wideouts real quick, because I kind of think about it from each of the big positions, I'm not going to lie. I don't see any wideouts at the top that I don't love. I mean, you got Jefferson as the most expensive one playing Detroit, and Diggs home against the Jets. There's no way you can call those bad matchups. The only thing that comes to mind when I think about wide receiver is I'm freaking sick of Mike Evans at this point. Mike Evans is killing me. So he's 2 weeks in a row, single digits, and he was 10 the week prior. He's really 4 weeks in a row, single digits, because even on DraftKings, that's a full point per reception. His best game over the last month is 5 for 54. I've had enough of Mike Evans. Godwin is getting like double the amount of receptions lately. And Evans is at San Francisco. He's 6,400 on DraftKings. So I guess that would be my true wide receiver fade would be Mike Evans. But I don't really understand what's going on with him there, but it has not been a great season for him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with that as well. I think Mike Evans needs to get more involved. I think that's why you're seeing Tampa Bay having a lot of the issues that they've been having, is we haven't been able to see Tom Brady get the ball out where he needs to get the ball. Although that team has been seeming to click a little bit more and more, and coming off that big win this week, I do expect Tampa Bay to actually be pretty good. And I do actually hope, I do think Mike Evans should turn it around. I think he could actually be, this could be one of his classic 2 touchdown games right here. For my quarterback that I'm fading, like I said, Deshaun Watson, not only not only because he looked bad, but Cincinnati's defense has been pretty good against the quarterback this year. And I just don't think, like I said, I don't think he put it back together in a week. I think you're going to see that team be really slow to kind of start bouncing back. I think I don't know if anybody listened to the show on Tuesday, but Justin was talking about grabbing Kareem Hunt in leagues, and that's to me is a huge thing. Like if you can get Kareem Hunt now in a lot of leagues, you can't get him anymore. You know, you're past your trade deadlines and stuff like that. But in Dynasty, just because if you need that win now, that would be a huge target to get because they might be shelving Nick Chubb a little bit more because there's going to be a lot less reason for those guys to win, stay competitive and things like that. So especially if he doesn't turn it around. So my fade at the running back position is Travis Etienne. I don't feel like he's been that good after he came back after that injury. He looked pretty good last week, but then you go up against the Tennessee defense that's sixth in the league against the running back. I think they'll be able to shut him down. I think they're going to be really leaning on Trevor Lawrence. They're going to really make him pass the ball, especially with him kind of hobbled up coming back in. I think that's going to be the guy who I'm stepping away from on that one, just because, like I said, that Tennessee defense, they're not great, but they're really fairly decent against the passing game. And then so for my wide receiver fade this week is CeeDee Lamb. I know Houston is terrible, but they do actually shut down the pass pretty well. And I think that they'll be able to shut down. CeeDee Lamb to me is a guy that's kind of like Amari Cooper, right? He has huge games and then he just kind of disappears. Well, he's had a few good games in a row. So I feel like it's just kind of his time to be due. And coming up against the defense that's, like I said, I mean, better than your average defense against the pass, I think. And I really do think that they're just going to get shredded on the ground by Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. They're not going to have to rely on the passing game very much. I think they're going to get up quick. And so I'm fading CeeDee Lamb this week. Joe, who are you paying up for this week?
Yeah, so I was just looking kind of like my triple threat of the week of expensive guys. I'm going Jalen Hurts at quarterback, 8,100 at the Giants. You know, I got to say, I'm staring at Mike White again. I really am at 5,500. And it's really funny because last week, my two quarterbacks on my two main slate lineups were Mike White and Deshaun Watson, and they both had dreadful first halves. But Mike White actually ended up with 22.5 points last week. So that was a great play for 5,400. I want to do it again. Obviously, they're going to have to throw a lot to even come close to staying in that game against Buffalo. But the weather again and everything, I'm thinking this isn't the week again to go to that well. So I'm going to play it safe. I don't love Mahomes at 8,000. Josh Allen's 8,300 against the Jets. But I really just, Jalen Hurts is just, he's doing it all. On the ground, in the air. No reason to think he's going to stop against the Giants. So I'm paying up for Hurts. I love Derrick Henry this week, home against Jacksonville. Henry's had two pretty not great games in a row. So I feel like this home against Jacksonville game is just, they're coming off two losses in a row. Also, they need a win this week to stay in the play, to split, to stay a playoff team. Home against Jacksonville, I feel like it's just with the doctor's order, and Derrick Henry will have a big game. And then at wide receiver, my pay up is going to be Amon St. Ramen Noodle Brown. They're home against Minnesota, and Brown's gone for 30 2 weeks in a row. 20 catches, 236 yards, 3 touchdowns, another 2 rushes on top of that. So, I mean, I can't ignore that. And at 7,800, he's still cheaper than quite a few wideouts. So I feel like that's a bargain. So I'm going to pay up for Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I'm going to say one more. It's not a pay up from a salary amount perspective, but, like the Cowboy defense real quick, who put up 20 against Indy last week, 16 a couple weeks ago against Minnesota. They're home against Houston, as you already talked about, with CeeDee Lamb, and they're 3,800, which is the third most expensive defense of the week. And it just feels really hard to not play that defense, especially considering they're not the most expensive one on the slate. Home against Houston, you just feel like that defense is going to have a freaking field day.
Well, and who's playing quarterback there? Nobody knows.
I don't know. I don't know the name. I can't answer that question. I can't answer that
David
question.
Carr. David Carr.
I think it's David Njoku is playing quarterback for them.
And Yoko, yes.
And Yoko Ono. Yeah, I also have heard that Marcus Russell might make an appearance down there in the next couple of weeks. Jeff, who are you paying up for this week?
Well, just because we were just talking about that, I have to mention, if that's the case, where the Dallas defense is the third most expensive on DraftKings, go with them, because on FanDuel they're easily the most expensive at 5,200 by 400. The next closest, you got 5,200. The next closest is the Bills at 4,800. So
I'm telling you right now, like, the value we bring in lineups is one thing, but drawing out that difference, like, that's insane to me. That's insane to me, the difference on those two sites. And you're absolutely right, Nash. Like, you should be playing both sites, and you absolutely should not play the Cowboy defense on FanDuel, but you should hammer them on DraftKings. Totally.
No doubt.
I don't understand how the algorithms can be that different.
Well, we can pause that actually with that, because we have a question that kind of relates to that. Do you guys use any apps besides FanDuel and DraftKings?
For DFS?
I use Thrive for DFS, but that's just over and unders.
Over and under what? Player performances?
Like yardage and touchdowns and things like that.
Do you find yourself more successful on it?
No, I do way better on FanDuel.
Really? So Thrive is saying you have to say Travis Kelce is going to be over or under 79.5 yards or something like that?
Yep. And then, they're like, dude, whoever runs Thrive is very good at what they do, because they put that number
right where it needs to be.
Right on that they hit way more than anybody else I've ever seen. You know.
So is it George? Does George run Thrive? Is George listening?
That's funny.
Right, he's a statistician.
It's a great question from Rich, because I'll tell you something right now. It's gotten so hard to cash in a big tourney. And I ranted about this at the beginning of the episode tonight about having to have those 3 touchdown guys. It's so hard to place on FanDuel and DraftKings now. Like, whether it's Thrive or there's Underdog, there's Stat Hero. And then there's another one, I think, called Monkey Knife Fight or something like that.
Monkey Knife Fight. Yeah, I like Monkey Knife Fight.
I'll be honest, and we're not doing it, and we should, but I encourage everybody to start using those sites, because you talk about getting less power players, less algorithms set up to pay for DraftKings and FanDuel lineups versus, a Monkey Knife Fight lineup, Underdog against Stat Hero. So I totally encourage people and us to start using those other sites for sure. We should.
Maybe one of those sites will be watching this in the off season, and they'll want to come in here and sponsor them, and we'll just go.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Hey, don't forget that there's. So you have Monkey Knife Fight, but you cannot forget about Gorilla Panic. They're coming, and something called This Is Permanent. That's a TED reference for all of you who are not paying attention.
When they smoke on the couch. That's good stuff.
I love it.
Monkey Knife Fight. Pay attention to Dash of DFS, boys, because we just doubled your business. monkeyknifefight.com for sponsorship. I digress again. So, getting back to what we were talking about, and you mentioned the Dallas Cowboys, and especially in the running game, and it's true, you cannot go wrong. I'm taking Pollard in my lineup just because he's 500 less than Elliott, but either one you can't go wrong with. Houston is the worst against the run, period, in the league as far as defense is concerned. Pollard on FanDuel 7,500. You get Elliott, who's 8,000, because Pollard, might get maybe a few fewer touches, but he does get a little bit more in the passing game. I think that's maybe a better value, although Elliott does get a lot in the red zone. Yeah.
Did you just say that? You just said that Ezekiel Elliott is 500 more expensive than Pollard on FanDuel?
Yes.
Pollard is 600 more expensive than Elliott.
What is happening around here? What is happening? So
I wish we could fix that.
If you're on DraftKings, take the Dallas D and please take Zeke. You'll do yourself a good favor there. And A couple others I'll go with is from a wide receiver and then quarterback standpoint, and I'll pass it over to Mikey. I'm gonna agree with Joe on Amon-Ra St. Brown. You can't go wrong. He's 8,600 on FanDuel, home versus Minnesota. He has 60 targets in the last 6 games, 10 targets a game. This is Jared Goff's go-to guy at home versus Minnesota, who's not the best pass defense. I don't know how you can go wrong as far as that's concerned. From a quarterback perspective, on the flip side of that game, I'm looking at Kirk Cousins. The Detroit defense is just simply the worst. I forget who mentioned it last week. Maybe it was Justin. I forget. But 7,500 at Detroit. I mean, Detroit is one of the, if not the worst against the pass. So you can expect a lot, in my opinion, out of Kirk Cousins in that passing game. So I'll defer to Mike.
That's funny because the one guy who I had all my stats prepared for because I was going to go off on was Amon-Ra St. Brown. And both of you basically have covered like his past 5 weeks in a row on here. But yeah, so that's the guy I'm definitely paying up for. Another guy that I got to get up and going, man. And he's just been too fun to ignore. And it's the guy's best receiver who you were just talking about with Kirk Cousins. And that's Justin Jefferson, man. This guy's target share on that offense is just incredible. I think against Detroit, probably a pretty good opportunity to get a lot of those targets as well. I think he should be able to clean house. And I'm actually also, I'm almost right on the same line as you there, Jeff, because I have Pollard going this week and I have Cousins going this week. So those are the guys that I paid up for right there. And we'll talk about who I paid down for when we talk about our lineups when we get going here. And we'll actually let you start that off, Jeff. So why don't you hit us with your FanDuel lineup?
Well, I always find it amusing. Every week there's some sort of animal coming across Joe's screen at some point or another. So, you had the cat before. Now you got Emma. Everybody say hello to Joe's golden retriever, Emma, who's part of the show now, apparently. So,
I'm all right.
Anyways,
Emma's cashed in on 4 DFS slates because she listens to DFS.
The most high maintenance dog on the planet.
Yeah, indeed. So at quarterback, and just because I have a couple of guys I'm paying up for, and this is an interesting one, and I'm curious as your takes on this one. But I'm going Tyler Huntley. At Pittsburgh, he's 7,000 on FanDuel. Earlier in the week, I called him Lamar Jackson light. If you look that up on Google, I still think maybe he doesn't get it done so much in a passing game. But from a rushing standpoint, I think this guy will get you some points, whether it be 15, 20 points at 7,000 on FanDuel. I think it's worth the roll of the dice. I don't know what you guys think on that one real quick.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good play. I think he's going to have the opportunity to run the ball, like you said. I don't know if the passing game, but it seemed like they were able to get their passing game a little bit more in tune when Lamar Jackson left last week as well.
True.
I like it. He's rushing. I think he's rushing touchdown dependent this week at Pittsburgh. I think that's going to be a mucky, just down dirty, physical, low scoring game with those two teams. He's rushing touchdown dependent, in my opinion, but I like him for the rushing touchdown, which probably gets him like close to 20. For the price, it makes sense. It does.
Gotcha. All right. So we already talked about Pollard, 7,500 home versus Houston. I had to go value a little bit again to fit somebody in, and not that I hate this play, but I got Zonovan Knight at Buffalo. He's only 6,300 on FanDuel. I get it. Buffalo has a tough D, but this is in Buffalo. This is December. This is not necessarily the best passing weather. I think they're going to have to run the ball. So I expect the Jets and Zonovan Knight to have a decent amount of touches, and he actually had some good performances the last couple of weeks. So that should be interesting to see. Wide receiver wise, we talked about St. Brown, home versus the Vikings, 8,600, because they have to throw to somebody, and I have to think Dak is going to get some stats against Houston. I'm going value wise. I'm going Michael Gallup, 6,000 only on FanDuel. I have to think again, Dak, Pollard, and Zeke are going to get their touches. I have to think Dak is going to get something. And
he loved Gallup in the red zone last week.
And he did 2 touchdowns last week, which worked out well. I don't expect the same repeat performance, but if you get a little bit out of that value at 6,000 from Gallup this week, I expected, I hope something like that comes to fruition, at least as far as from a Dak perspective is concerned. And we talked about this earlier. Godwin's been the guy. at San Francisco. I get the Niners are a tough defense. He's 7,500 on FanDuel, but I mean, Godwin's been the go-to. I don't know where Evans has even gone. Brady's not even seemingly looking his way. It seems like Godwin is the go-to. I expect Godwin to maybe put up somewhere in the vicinity of 15 to 20 from a wide receiver standpoint. Tight end wise, actually, I'm going tight end and also at flex. I'm going, and I don't even know how to pronounce this guy's name, and pardon me but I had to go value wise from tight end. I think it's Chig Okonkwo, somebody for Tennessee. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that. He's gotten a handful of targets. I mean, again, I had to pick a value play somewhere in between there. He's 4,800 at home versus Jacksonville. I'm fitting him in only because at flex, I'm going Travis Kelce at Denver, 8,000. Again, not that I expect a ton of points to be put up, but Kelce is the go-to guy that we've seen over the last few years for Mahomes. And then defense, I'm going Baltimore at Pittsburgh, 4,100. I don't see Pittsburgh putting up a ton of points with that offense, period. So
I like it. So me and you had a lot of the similar lineup with Pollard and things like that, but definitely paid differently in a few different respects, in a few different regards as well too, in the running back and wide receiver position. So I started out with Kirk Cousins at 7,500 just because against Detroit, I really like that, and I like being able to stack him with Justin Jefferson, like I said earlier. That's going to be my receiver this week that I paid up for. Running back Travis Homer, I don't believe that Kenneth Walker or DJ Dallas practiced again today or yesterday, I mean. And so seeing neither one of those guys and both of those guys being in game time decision, I feel like Travis Homer could feast. And so in my flex, I have Kareem Hunt at 5,700 to give me a little bit of flex with some salary, right? Like, so if I find out that Kenneth Walker is going to get the start, I can go in there and make a move for Travis Homer and still pay up with a little bit of available salary just in case that move doesn't pay off. Then I got Tony Pollard at 7,500. We talked way much about him because he's been killing it this year. I got Robert Woods at 5,800 without Treylon Burks there. I feel like he's going to be the focus on that offense, and I feel like they are going to have to pass to keep up with Jacksonville. I don't see this being like an incredibly high-scoring game, but I do feel like there's going to be a couple of touchdowns. I think Robert Woods could easily be the receiving benefactor of one of those touchdowns. Justin Jefferson at 9,300. You don't got to talk about that guy. And then my next guy, Amon-Ra St. Brown, 8,600. We don't got to say anything about him. I mean, these guys have just been doing what they do best and producing. I like Evan Ingram against Tennessee. Tennessee has been giving it up to the tight end position. They're the 20th worst, and I think Evan Ingram scored last week. So why not just keep that train rolling and keep on going, Evan Ingram? And then, like I said, Kareem Hunt at the flex. That'll likely change to somebody, call it in like the $6,000 tier where we have guys like Michael Gallup, for instance. I think I could see it being Michael Gallup, even maybe J.K. Dobbins with Lamar Jackson out there. I feel like might be another good move. So you might see it turn into something like that, just like I said, depending on what we see with the Seattle backfield. I do know I'm going to try to get a piece of that Seattle backfield if I can, though, against Carolina, the 27th worst rushing defense. Joe, who do you got, bud?
Yeah, real quick. Rich asked a question earlier. Did Watson price drop or stay the same? Which I think it's a good question, and it's kind of funny. He dropped $100 on DraftKings. He went from 6,500. He went from 6,500 to 6,400. How do you do on FanDuel, Nish?
He dropped 1,000. He went from it was 8,000 last week, if I'm not mistaken, and this week he is 7,000. Yeah, so he dropped 1,000.
All right, full slate DraftKings, 1 p.m. Jalen Hurts, 8,100 at the Giants. I mean, the guy's just going for 30 almost every week now. It's hard to not take him. Derrick Henry, 7,900 home against Jacksonville. I don't take Derrick Henry on DFS much during the season because he doesn't catch a lot of balls, but he's had a couple of tough games in a row, as has the team in general, and this just feels like that get-right game. They need this game to get their playoff positioning back to a healthy stature, and I just feel like they're going to run all over Jacksonville. Mikey, you said it. We hadn't talked about him until you brought him up either. Travis Homer is looking to be the starter this week in Seattle. Once he got some playing time last week, he caught He caught a touchdown pass. He's looking to get those receptions and those rushes this week, and he's only 5,000 on DraftKings, home against Carolina. As we're cheap plays, my other really cheap play of the week is Isaiah Hodgins of the Giants, 3,500 wide receiver. It's really funny. I mean, he went for 15 last week, 5 for 44 and a touchdown on 6 targets against the Commanders. He had 3 catches 2 weeks in a row prior to that. He's only 3,500. The Giants will be throwing the ball the whole second half because Philly's probably going to kill him in the first half. Hodgins is getting he's getting the targets, he's getting the snaps, so I'm going to give it a go. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 7,800. I mean, 30 plus 2 games in a row, home against Minnesota. We've already talked about it. Third wide out this week, Garrett Wilson for the Jets. I don't believe they're going to beat Buffalo, but especially because they've already beaten Buffalo once. So are they really going to beat Buffalo twice this year? Probably not. But as long as there isn't a weather issue, because if there is, I will make a change before 1 o'clock. But as long as there's not snow or 70-mile-per-hour winds, I like him in garbage time to ramp up those stats against Buffalo. Mikey, you talked about him. I'm with you. You know, it's funny. Jeff brought up Michael Gallup a couple minutes ago, and it made me make a lineup change. I had George Pickens in as my flex at 5,000 for Pittsburgh, but once Jeff started talking about Gallup, it made me look at him. Gallup's gone for 9 catches, 86 yards, and 2 touchdowns the last week. And he's 400 less than Pickens. So I threw Gallup in my flex at 4,600, 2 touchdowns last week. Again, like him again this week against Houston. That enabled me to upgrade from Cameron Brate to Evan Ingram at tight end. To your point, Ingram scored last week. He had 14 DraftKings points, 5 for 30 and a touchdown. And I do like him again this week against Tennessee. So I like what I was able to do there once Mace made me take a look at Gallup. I hadn't even looked. It's so funny. When you look at this 1 p.m. slate in 10 games, you can spend an hour on your lineup. But once you go through a conversation like this, there's always somebody I didn't look at for the week. I played Zonovan Knight all day last week. I didn't look at him last week because of the matchup. And then Jeff brought him up, and it made me take a look. And the same thing with Gallup. I didn't look at him until Jeff mentioned him. But for 4,600 on DraftKings, that's a great freaking play. And again, it gave me the opportunity to upgrade at tight end and then finishing at defense, Cowboy defense, 3,800 against Houston. There's almost not a team I wouldn't play the Cowboy defense against, maybe other than KC, Buffalo, and Philly. I'd play him probably against any other team right now, but can't resist them home against Houston.
Well, I feel like with the way the DFS works, a lot of times you're going to pass over players because you're not really looking at player names as much as you're looking at player cost, right? Like, you know what your budget's going to be for the next X amount of players. So instead of looking at this guy or this guy, you're looking at this cost and this cost, so you can make sure you fit in the guys that you just desperately know you like this week. Dude, I could not get away from Jefferson or Amon-Ra. And, I mean, that was kind of my dilemma. I'm like, I really only want to pay up for one of these guys. How can I make a lineup around that? And I was like, dude, I just can't get away from either one of these guys. How can I make a lineup based around both of these guys? And I mean, if I like Justin Jefferson, why don't I like Kirk Cousins? And Kirk Cousins in the daytime is perfect. I hate Kirk Cousins in primetime, but man, I love him in the daytime. So sign me up for that. That's a good point. And that's really the key out of everything DFS is fitting in those 2 or 3 guys from a high salary standpoint, and then filling in where it makes sense, but picking the right people. So it really is keying in on the guys similar to what Joe was talking about earlier. It seems to be whatever 2 or 3 per week, and then filling in the right way. If you can do that, then you got a home run each week. But obviously that's not easy to do.
It's funny though, because to Mike's point, like, I neglect as a habit the middle price range are the players that I neglect. And it's a dangerous price range, right? Like, because I feel like, okay, I know I want Amon-Ra, I know I want Jefferson, I know I want Eckler, I know I want Chubb and Hurts and Allen and all these big guys at 8,000 or whatnot. And I know that Travis Homer this week is my 5,000, or Zonovan Knight this week's my 45. That's great. I have to challenge myself to look at like the Brandon Ayuk's at 6,000, the Schusters at 6,000, the David Montgomery's at 60. Because those guys can go off too. but you feel like you're like, okay, high end, low end. It's the middle of, and you can't sleep on those guys.
Yeah, true.
Absolutely. Speaking of sleep on those guys, that's going to do it for the Dash of DFS this week. We had, like I said, we had a couple loose ends there. You know what? Ask us in about 10 hours when we're on for the Blitz at 10:30 tomorrow morning. You got 3/5 of the Blitz crew right here. I think we'll all be here tomorrow morning, ready to get things done for you. So make sure you're tuning into that. Make sure you're going to toiletsandtitles.com. Like I said, we got the best articles, the best interviews. Some of the best stuff on the air is happening right there. Like I said, we've got IDP, we got Dynasty, we've got DFS, we've got Joe with a Van Halen record. I mean, you're like, this is the kind of stuff that you don't see every day.
Well, we were talking about music before we went live, and they're not my favorite band, but this to me is the greatest album cover in the history of rock and roll.
I actually completely agree. Yeah, we had a great rock and roll conversation before the show. This is the kind of stuff that you're going to get if you go onto our patreon.com, guys. Make sure you get on there. And because in the Discord, it's no holds barred. You're going to get to hear Joe talk about music. He'll probably be talking about Pearl Jam with me because we're both huge Pearl Jam fans. We love that shit. Like I said, $10 free entry into the Frankenstein. What more do you want, man? Get on that Patreon. Help us out. Buy us a cup of coffee. Do some of that stuff. Guys, do you have anything to add?
Don't piss me off, Art.
Don't piss me off, Art. I love it. I love it. Well, guys, with that, we're going to go ahead and sign off for Jeff, for Joe, and myself. Thank you at toiletsandtitles.com, and we will see you guys tomorrow morning.